Hey everyone, Wolf Lord Rho here. Today we're discussing the Emperor's arrival on Mars, the birth of the Omnissiah. Spoiler warning to begin, as the events we're discussing today are from the Horus Heresy novel Mechanicum by author Graham McNeill. As always, I really recommend you read the stories for yourself first, without spoilers, as that's the best way to enjoy the lore for yourself. But with that said, let's just jump straight in. Okay, so in our last conversation we discussed the prophecy of the Omnissiah, the legendary foretelling of the coming of the machine god to the Red Planet. The prophecy seemingly described the Emperor in its entirety, and in knowing the truth behind the Emperor's actions, it's easy to understand why. If you missed the previous conversation, maybe go back and give that a listen before continuing with this, especially if you're unfamiliar with the prophecy and the truth of the Emperor's actions. The dark hidden truth from the universe is that the Emperor had in fact been to the Red Planet previously, or at least had been involved heavily in its history. Having defeated a mysterious dragon in the ancient history of Old Earth, quite possibly the Catan Void Dragon, the Emperor imprisoned it within the depths of Mars, so that its dreams would shape and influence the future of the Red Planet, ensuring the rise of the Mechanicum in the centuries to come. Whether the Emperor foresaw the technological future of Mars and merely wished to ensure it transpired, or whether he was directly responsible for it, we will never know. However, one thing's for sure, when he finally unified Terra and set course for Mars all those thousands of years later, he was greeted as the unmistakable Omnissiah. It was the Knights of House Tyrannus who led the procession up the slope of Olympus Mons, the immense volcano upon the surface, the sky breaking into rain for the first time in Mars's known existence, a sight so rare it moved Commander Verticorda to tears as he continued his ascent accompanied by his men. Behind them they were followed by the people of Mars, tens of thousands of them, signalling the magnitude of the moment. For it was not the rain alone that led them to come, but what it meant: the arrival of their god. So the prophecy would state, "Behold the coming of the one supreme master of machines. He comes to you from heaven in the drops of rain." It was as if the planet itself knew what this moment represented, as the Emperor's golden craft descended from the stars. Golden light suddenly burst from the clouds above, dazzling and brilliant, and bolts of scarlet lightning danced like crackling spiderwebs between the ground and sky. Verticorda almost lost his footing as he instinctively looked up. A mighty floating city of gold was descending from the heavens, like a mountainous spire sheared from the side of some vast, continental landmass. The city was studded with light and colour, its dimensions enormous beyond imagining. A vast eagle-winged prow of gold marked one end of the floating city, and colossal battlements like the highest towers of the mightiest Martian spire rose like gnarled stalagmites from the other. Rippling engines flared with unimaginable power on the colossal edifice's underside, and Verticorda stood amazed at the technology required to prevent such a monstrous creation from plummeting to the ground. Flocks of smaller craft attended the larger one, its dimensions only growing larger the more it emerged from the concealing clouds. "Blood of the machine," hissed Yelsic, rider of the knight at his back. "How can such a thing stay aloft?" We always associate Mars and the Mechanicum with the technology of the Imperium, being responsible for every creation and marvel that flies the stars. However, this here is the perfect reminder that actually they aren't, and in fact the Emperor was more than capable of perfecting marvels without them. Here we see the people of the Mechanicum stunned by the Emperor's vessel, a craft befitting the master of mankind. A mighty floating city of gold was descending from the heavens. No coincidence in the words used there. Heaven from the prophecy, and so too mighty. Sons of Mars, listen well, for one will come, mighty and strong, holding the scepter of power in his hand. These words used again here show how Verticorda is already associating this with the Omnissiah, whether knowingly or not. A subtle mirror in his line of thinking to the fabled prophecy. Already weeping at the sight of the rain, and then the Emperor's vessel descending from orbit. The incredulous sight of the gleaming gold cityscape defying all sense of logic. So why would the Emperor need Mars if he could achieve feats like this upon Terra? If he could create his Astartes and his Primarchs? Well, because he needed mass production. Mars is an entire world dedicated to technology. A culture obsessed with the machine. Its ability to produce would far outweigh anything that Terra could turn out. And to conquer the very stars, the Emperor needed a galaxy's worth of material, of weapons, of vessels. Quite simply, Mars would be the forge that would fire the Emperor's conquest. And its lost forge worlds across the galaxy would be the linchpins of the future expansion. That was why the Emperor needed the Mechanicum, and that was why he ensured it came about. Because it was vital. You can see those aspects Rabute would inherit with that kind of foresight and planning. We never really think about Guilliman as a clear example of being his father's son, instead focusing on other traits such as the likes Sanguinius inherited, or Vulcan, or Magnus the Red. But actually, when you look at it, when you stop and think, everything the Emperor ever did was exactly with his plan in mind. Even when the heresy struck, we see him adapt and reroute, alter course for that time 10,000 years in the future, when he foresaw the Imperium had a chance to fight back, a time when the long-lost heroes would return. But as for this meeting, this arrival on Mars for the very first time, at least believed first time, Verticorda and his knights would approach the landed gargantuan craft before them, as the thousands upon thousands of onlookers would crowd the volcano crater rim behind and around. A single ramp would descend from the Golden City, and one single doorway would open. From it would come the golden light of the Emperor, and as the watching thousands gasped in awe and anticipation, the master of mankind would set foot upon the Red Planet. And there's a real interesting line here, as though the very planet shuddered with pleasure to know this individual's touch. Perhaps metaphorical, perhaps just a sense of feeling Verticorda had within his knight, at a countless thousand souls gasping in awe. However, could it just be literal? Could this shudder Verticorda mistakes for pleasure and rejoicement actually be that secret imprisoned dragon, shuddering at the sense of its returned captor, the presence who defeated and entrapped him so long ago? When you know the truth of how the Emperor had guided Mars's evolution, it really gives you a different way of looking at this whole encounter. As almost how the Emperor is an actor here, playing the part to perfection. Because that's exactly what he does. He looked back down and saw the warrior standing before him, tall and clad in golden armour. Each plate wrought with the same skill and love as had been lavished upon his vessel. The warrior wore no helm and was fitted with no visible breathing augmetics, yet seemed untroubled by the chemical-laden air of Mars. Verticorder found his gaze dwelling on the warrior's face, beautiful and perfect, as though able to see beyond the armoured exterior of Eres Lictor and into Verticorder's soul. In his eyes, his so very ancient eyes, Verticorder saw the wisdom of all the ages and the burden of all the knowledge contained within them. A crimson mantle flapped in the wind behind the giant warrior, and he carried an eagle-top scepter clutched in one mighty gauntlet. The golden giant's eyes scrutinized the blue-armoured form of Verticorder's mount, from its conical glacis to the aventailed shoulder plates upon which the wheel and lightning bolt symbol of the Knights of Tyrannus was emblazoned. The warrior reached out towards him. "Your machine is damaged, Tamon Verticorder," he said, his voice heavy and yet musical, like the most perfect sound imaginable. "May I?" Verticorder found himself unable to form a reply, knowing that anything he might say would be trite in the face of such perfection. It didn't occur to him to wonder how the sublime warrior knew his name. Without waiting for a reply, the warrior reached out, and Verticorder felt his touch upon the joints of Eres Lictor's knee. "Machine, heal thyself," said the warrior, the purpose and self-belief in his voice passing into Verticorder, as though infusing every molecule of his hybrid existence of flesh and steel with newfound purpose and vitality. He felt the warmth of the warrior's touch through the shell of his mount, and gasped as the trembling vibration spread through its armoured frame of plasteel and ceramite. He took an involuntary step back, feeling the movements of his mount flow as smoothly as they ever had. With one step, he could feel Eres Lictor move as though it had just come off the assembly lines, its stubborn joint flexing like new. "Who are you?" he gasped, his voice sounding grating and pathetic next to the mighty timbre of the Golden Warrior's voice. "I am the Emperor," said the warrior. "Here we have the arrival of the Emperor, coming in peace to Mars, having unified Terra, seeking their assistance to unify mankind, to save their race. While in truth, we have the arrival of the Emperor, having ensured the rise of the Mechanicum, descending with the spectacle of an entire vessel, so it's as if a golden city itself is descending from heaven, emerging alone, and immediately healing a machine as if by touch. It's almost as if the Emperor wanted to be acknowledged as the Omnissiah. And indeed, he most likely did. No, the Emperor doesn't want religion. Yes, he demands the imperial truth. But let's look at the facts here. He, at the very least, guided and ensured the Mechanicum's rise. He most certainly made his arrival as awe-inspiring as possible. He was carrying a scepter, the likes of which we have never seen before, or since. And he healed a machine with his bare hands, before anything else, in front of the amassed crowd of thousands. And do I need to mention the uttering of "Machine, heal thyself"? Since when has the Emperor ever spoken words when using his psychic power? He doesn't have to, and we know he never does. He simply does it. So this, perhaps of all of it, is the most clear example of him acting the part, playing a role. It is most certainly, at the very least, very out of character. And then he offers Mars the right to retain their worship, to retain their faith, in direct contrast to the imperial truth. Now, you could argue that's to the machine, not the warp, not a god. However, you could equally argue it's to him, the perfect method of ensuring the Mechanicum's loyalty. Why conduct another time-consuming, costly war of conquest against Mars, which could have taken more valuable centuries, when he could secure their loyalty with a little theatrics and a little leeway, allowing them sovereignty over the technology he fully already intended for them, and allowing them to view him as the earthly representation of the Omnissiah. The Emperor came with an army of conquest if he needed it, but through his preparations centuries earlier, through his actions here in this arrival, he ensured that the allegiance of Terra and Mars would be struck, that no war would be needed, and that, as we know, would be the Emperor's preference. For time was always against him. Time was the true enemy he raced against. Now, there is one big factor we have to keep in mind here. As ever, this is not told from the Emperor's point of view. In fact, this whole encounter is told from Night Lord Verticorda's point of view. Him meeting the Emperor. In noting the heal myself comment is extremely out of character for the Emperor. We do have to keep in mind it could well be a figment of Verticorda's imagination. That yes, the Emperor did indeed heal the machine with his power. Yet the whole encounter so overawed Verticorda. Again, as could be seen with him already weeping at the sight of the rain, that his imagination simply took over. It would only be fair to admit here, even Primarchs are awed meeting the Emperor. How could a mortal not be? Especially one believing it was his god. So, was the Emperor directly responsible for the Mechanicum's rise? Or did he simply help it along? Did he, as it appears, intentionally ensure he would be seen as the Omnissiah, to secure Mars's loyalty, directly playing into that prophecy? Or was it simple happenstance, a byproduct of the dragon's influence upon the population, the dreams of his captor influencing those around him, giving them dreams of a golden one to come? And the Emperor simply arrived as he was, the Emperor, the Golden Knight, the master of mankind. It's most definitely an intriguing one to consider, because regardless of the truth, the simple fact is, in that moment of arrival, after healing a machine and arriving from heaven as a golden saviour, Lord Verticorda reacted the only way he could, bowing his knight to its healed knee, and heralding the Omnissiah. So, as always everyone, what do you think? Had the Emperor planned this the entire time? Did he intentionally give rise to the Mechanicum, and then ensure he would be seen as the Omnissiah upon his arrival? Was this the easiest way to secure Mars's loyalty, to avoid another costly war? Is the descent of the Golden City, the scepter in his hands, the healing of the machine, all evidence of the Emperor playing into the prophecy, ensuring he would be seen as the Omnissiah? Or is it instead just happenstance, a coincidence, that it was the influence of the Void Dragon beneath Mars who caused the people of Mars to dream of the Emperor? That the Emperor wasn't playing at it, just appearing as he always does, and that Mars had already fallen to the notion this being was the Omnissiah? As always everyone, leave your thoughts in the comments below. Huge thank you to all my subscribers, your support truly means a lot to me, it really does. If you're new, please consider subscribing to help the channel grow, and if you enjoyed this particular vid then why not drop a like on it too. But with that said, I am off, and I'll see you all again real soon.